Hi there, my name's Danny. This is the 7th module of 10 that I'll be sharing here on YouTube for my full course on Quasar Framework version 1. Welcome to this course module. So we've created our Vuex store, we've added our tasks data to it in the state object, and we've retrieved this data using getters and displayed the tasks on the page. But we need to actually be able to change the data that's in the state in the store. So in this module, we're going to learn how to do that with actions and mutations. Let's jump back to the app and we'll open up the inspector and we'll go to the Vue DevTools and the Vuex tab. Click on base state. You can see our state object here. If I open up the tasks and open up the first task, which is this one, you can see completed is set to false. Now, if I click on this first task, although it's marked as completed on the page, if we look in this state object here, it's still set to false. And also we have this error in the console which says, do not mutate Vuex store state outside mutation handlers. Now if I open up task.vue in the components folder, components tasks, task.vue, here's the click handler for this task. It's trying to set task completed to the opposite of task completed. Now if we open up the store file, store-tasks in the store folder, so it's trying to change this property here, but with Vuex we're only allowed to change the state within a mutation, which is a method that will go in here. Now it's generally best practice to create an action which then calls a mutation. So let's create an action for updating a task. So down in the actions object, we'll create a function called update task. And we'll stick a console log in there, which just says update task action. Save that. Okay, jump back to task.vue. How can we actually call this action from within this component? Well, what we can do is we can map actions to our component, a bit like we did with map getters. So down in the script section, you want to add import map actions from Vuex. Save that. Now we map actions within the methods property. So I'll create a methods property down here, and we want to add ... map actions. And then within that, you want to specify the store module that we want to grab the actions from, which is tasks. And then within this array, we specify all the actions that we want to be available within this component. So our action was called update task. So we'll stick update task in there. Save that. And now this action is mapped to our component, so we can just call it from wherever we like. So if I jump back up to this queue item element here and this click handler, I can just replace this click handler with update task. Let's just save that. I'll refresh the page. Now if I click on one of the tasks, you can see in the console here, update task action. So this action is now being fired from our component. But we need to actually send some information to this action. Otherwise, we can't really do anything. So what we can do is we can send an object to this action with some data in it. So if we look at our data, what we're trying to do here is change a field within a task. So what information are we going to need to be able to do this? Well, we're going to need the ID of the task. And then we're going to need the properties that we're going to change within that task. So back to task.vue, what we could do is we could send an object with, first of all, the ID, which we have available in this component thanks to this prop, this ID prop. So we can do ID, set that to ID, And then we can create another property called, let's say, updates, which contains the updates that we want to send. So we could just send completed and set that to the opposite of task.completed. Save that. Now back to store tasks.js. We need to pass in this object, which we generally call a payload. So within this update task action, actions first of all expect an object, and I'll explain that later. And then after that you can pass in the data that you're sending from the component. So we'll call this payload. Now if I log this out, let's see if that's working. Okay, now if I click on a task, great, it says update action, and then we see the payload that we've sent with the ID, ID1, and the updates. In this case, completed true, because completed is false to begin with and we want to set it to true. Now we can't change the state of this store from within an action. We need to call a mutation from that action. And we need to use the commit function to do that. So in this update task action, we need to, in this object here, pass in the commit method. And then we can just simply add commit, then the name of the mutation we want to trigger, which we'll also call update task. And then we want to pass in the payload, so that the payload is also available within the mutation. And I'll just delete these two logs. Now we can create a mutation called update task. And we need to pass in the state to this, and then the payload, which we're sending from this action. So within this mutation, I'll just log out that payload to make sure it's working. Payload from mutation. Save that. Now let's click on a task. Okay, we can see it in the console here. Payload from mutation, with all the same data that we initially passed to this action. So how can we update the task in the state from this mutation? Well, we could use object assign. Now object assign allows us to essentially copy the properties from one object to another object. And we have the properties that we want to copy in this payload, in this updates property. So we could just use object assign to copy these updates to the task in the state. So we want to do object.assign, and the first parameter is the object that we're assigning to, the object that we're copying stuff to. So this is going to be state.tasks, and then the ID of the task. And we have that within this payload object. Remember here? So it's at payload.id. So we can just do state.tasks, payload.id. And then the second parameter is the data that we want to apply to that, which is in payload.updates. Okay, let's get rid of that console log and save that. See if it's working. If we open up the Vue DevTools and let's look at the state. Currently completed on this first task is set to false. So let's click on this task. Okay, you can now see up here, it's told us that it's fired this update task mutation. Now if we click on that and then go down to state, we can now see this first task completed is now set to true. So this is working now. So we're now manipulating the state using this mutation. So I'll just quickly run through what's happening again here. So I'll jump to task.view. So first of all, the user clicks the item, which fires the update task action, which is mapped down here using map actions. update task there. So this action is fired. We've passed the payload in, and then we simply fire this update task mutation, and again pass the same payload across to that, and then we use object.assign to assign the updates in that payload to the task that we want to change. We can now mark tasks as completed. Let's add the ability to delete tasks. So first of all, we're going to need a button on each one of these tasks. So let's open up task.view. You can see these queue item elements. They're made up of these queue item section components. So I'm just going to duplicate this last one, this last queue item section component. I'm going to delete everything inside there, and we're going to stick a button in here. So let's jump to the Quasar site and go to View Components and then Buttons. Let's have a look what we can find. So I'd like a button like this, sort of round and flat button with an icon. So I'm going to click on View Source and grab the code for that button. Copy that, paste it into this item section. I'm going to break these attributes onto multiple lines. Save that. Okay, we can now see the icon on the page. It's taking up a little bit of space there, so if we jump to the button page and down to QButton API and then Style, we have this dense prop that we can add, which makes it take up less space. So let's add that to our button. Dense. Okay, that's a little bit better. Now we need an appropriate icon for this button. So let's jump to the material icons page, material.io/tool/icons. And we'll search for delete. Okay, this bin icon looks pretty good, and that has the class name delete. So let's change this icon prop here on the button to delete. Save that. Okay, it now looks like a delete button. But I'd like it to be red, so this color prop here, let's change that to red, which is one of the classes you can see on the color palette page in style and identity. So yeah, red. Okay, that's looking a bit better. Now when the user clicks this, I want to first show a confirm dialog to the user. So let's first of all just add a click handler to this button. And we'll call a method called prompt to delete. And we'll pass in the ID of this particular task, because we're going to need that when we actually delete the task. And down here in methods, we have this map actions method here. We can just stick methods as usual underneath this. So underneath that, we'll create a prompt to delete method, pass in that ID. Okay, so now we need a dialog to show to the user. So let's jump back to the Quasar site. We're going to use the dialog plugin for this. This is a Quasar plugin. So we want to go to Quasar plugins and then dialog. Scroll down and we can see what they look like here. There's an alert and there's a confirm. This is what we want. First of all, we need to install this. So it tells us here we need to add dialog to the plugins array within the config file. So let's open up quasar.conf.js. Look for plugins. Here we go. And we'll add dialog to that. Save that. Now let's grab the code for this confirm dialog here. So I'll click on View Source and then Script. And here's the code for that. So let's just grab that, copy and paste it, and we'll change it as needed. Okay, so I'm going to remove all these callbacks here on OK, on cancel, on dismiss, and just leave this first on OK callback, because this pop-up is only going to do one thing. So when the user clicks the OK button within this confirm dialog, then this on OK callback will be fired. So within that for now, I'm just going to put deleted. Save that. And I'll change the message here to really delete. Save that. Okay, so let's see if this dialog is working when we click the button. Yeah, that seems to be working. And if I click OK, then we see that deleted log in the console. Now we have a little problem here. When I click on this delete button, it's marked this task as completed. Why is that? Well, that's because we have this click handler on the task, which is marking the task as completed. And this is a parent element of this button. So when we click this button, it's bubbling up to this Q-item element. So this click handler is being triggered, and we don't want that. So how can we stop that? Well, if we jump back down to our button here, and this click handler, we can add a modifier to this, which is .stop. And that will stop this event from propagating up to the parent elements above it. Save that. Refresh the page. Okay, now when I click the button, the task is no longer marked as completed. Right, so we need an action and a mutation in order to actually delete a task from the state. So let's jump back to store tasks and actions, and we'll create a new action called delete task. We'll pass in the commit method, and in this case the payload is just going to be an ID. So I'm not going to call it payload, I'm just going to call it ID. And then within that action we can commit an equivalent mutation. So we'll commit a mutation called also delete task. We'll pass in that ID. And I'll create that mutation here, delete task. Pass in the state and the ID that we've sent from that action. And then I'll just log out that ID. Save that. Now if I click on this delete button, then click OK. Okay, we're not seeing this log. Let's jump back to task.view and then down to the prompt to delete method. Okay, I'm not actually triggering this action yet, this delete task action. So we need to map that action to this component. Now we already have this map actions method here. We could just add delete task to this array here, like this. And now the delete task action is available within this component. So back down in this onOK callback, we can just fire this dot delete task and then pass in the ID, which we're already passing into this prompt to delete method. Save that. Reload the page, and now if I click delete and then OK, we can now see in the console delete ID ID1, which means that this delete task action is being successfully fired, which is then firing the delete task mutation successfully, and we're passing in the ID successfully. So now in this mutation we need to actually delete this task from the state up here. So how can we do that? Well, one thing we could try is just delete, then state.tasks, and then the ID. Let's see if that works. Save that. Click delete, click OK. Okay, that's not working. But if we look in the Vue DevTools here, it has fired this mutation. If we click on that and go to state and then tasks, you can see it's actually removed this task from the tasks object, but our view here is not updated. And that's because in Vue.js, whenever we want to delete from the state or add a brand new object to the state, in order to keep it reactive, we need to use built-in Vue methods for performing these deletes and updates. So what we can do is we can import Vue at the top of this store tasks.js. So import Vue from Vue, and then instead of delete state.tasks ID, we can just do Vue.delete and then pass in the object we want to delete from, which is state.tasks, and then pass in the key we want to delete, which is ID. So I'll just delete these two lines here, save that. Let's see if that works now. Click delete, click OK. Great, the task is now deleted. Thanks for watching. Make sure you subscribe and leave a comment to let me know what you think. And if you're interested in the full course, click the link in the description. In the next video, we're going to add the ability to add a task. So we're going to add an add task button. When the user clicks that, we're going to show a modal. Within that modal, we're going to have a form. We're going to add validation to this form. And when the user submits the form and it's valid, we're going to add the task to the Vuex state.